Hey, Holy Readers, can you believe it is week 9? If you're just tuning into Holy Holy for the first time, I want to remind you that we are reading through the Life Journal reading program. And so we're going to read the Old Testament once and the New Testament twice in 1 year, and we are recapping every week's reading. So this week, we're recapping what we read last week. These are the dates, February 26th through March 3rd. We've read Numbers 19 through 36, Psalm 28, and Mark chapter 5 through Mark chapter 11. So in the latter half of this year, we're really going to dive into the New Testament. So right now we're focusing more on the Old Testament, and we're in the book of Numbers. It's the 4th book in the Torah. So remember, Numbers has 5 sections. It's 3 wilderness sections connected by 2 travel sections. And we talked about the first section in the wilderness, which is Sinai. And now we're finishing up the second section in the wilderness, which is Paran. So in the second section, we've talked about the 12 spies. We've talked about Korah and his rebellion. And then we talked about Moses striking the rock all last week. So in chapter 21, we get an amazing, amazing story about Moses creating a serpent atop a pole. And the children of Israel, they are rebelling against God. And God is handing them over to their consequences, which is that they have snakes now in the desert that are biting them. These are poisonous snakes and people are dying. Here, it's important to realize that our sin has consequences, and God is just in allowing us to reap some of those consequences. But God is also a God of mercy, and he is always giving mercy to his people, always giving them a way of escape. And so even though their decisions have brought on these consequences, God in his mercy is making a way out. And he tells Moses, go and make a staff with a serpent on the top. Now, it's difficult in Hebrew to translate whether it's a bronze serpent or a copper serpent, but either way, it's a metal serpent. And when the people look on this serpent, they will be healed. Now, in ancient Near Eastern cultures, it was very common for people to take amulets and statues or whatever, a sculpture of animals, and believe that it was going to bring them protection and healing. In fact, in the 1960s, there in Egypt, they found a 5-inch bronze snake. And so this was not out of the realm of possibilities. It was something very common. Also, the Greek people and Greek mythology often borrowed from the Bible, particularly the Torah, and incorporated that into their mythology. And we see that with Samson and Hercules. But then also here we see this with the bronze serpent and then the Greek god Asclepius. And so he was the god of healing, and he had a staff with a serpent on the top of it. And today, in modern times, we've taken those images and made them the images of healing for our hospitals. You'll see the staff with the 2 serpents around it. And this is where it comes from, actually, this story. But here's what we believe. We believe that this is a picture of Christ. And actually, Christ in John chapter 12, verse 32, he said, and I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself. So Christ saw this story here in the book of Numbers as a picture of what he would become. And when we see the serpent, what should we be thinking of? Genesis 1 through 3, that the serpent would strike, but that there would be a man that would come that would crush his head. And that is what Christ did on the cross. He was lifted up. People would look on him and be healed, saved, delivered, changed, set free. But then also, through his lifting up, he would crush the head of the serpent. So then we move on to the 3rd wilderness section, which is Moab. This is the wilderness of Moab in chapters 22 through 26. This is also an incredible story because this is the story of the king Balak hiring Balaam to curse the people of Israel. So remember, they're wandering in the wilderness. Think about it. Think if you're a king in this region and you see all of these people moving throughout your territory. That is terrifying, because what if they decide to take over your land or to come against your people? So Balak decides to hire Balaam to curse this large people that are moving through the territory. And so Balaam comes and he's going to stand on top of this mountain and look down and curse these people. But he says, I can only do what God tells me to do. This is very interesting because Balaam is a sorcerer. He is a pagan sorcerer, and he was hired to do this by all kinds of regions. And we see this in archaeology. In 1967, there was an excavation in Deir Allah in Jordan. That's a place. And then on the walls, they found an inscription that said, Balaam, son of Beor. And so we know through archaeology that Balaam was a real guy, and he really was hired by kings to curse other peoples. Let me tell you, archaeology continues to prove that the Bible is real. These people were real, and these things really happened, which means our God is real, and his miraculous works are true. And what he did all the way back then, thousands of years ago, he'll do for you. And so he had already blessed the people of Israel with the blessing of Abraham, that they would multiply, that they would be a kingdom of priests, that the blessing would come to the nations through Israel. So when they're down in this valley, it's very interesting, their heart, because they are cursing God. They're angry. They're frustrated because they don't have all of the amenities that they're looking for. They feel like resources are limited, and they're just walking around in circles, cursing God and cursing Moses. Well, at the same time, on top of the mountain, you've got this pagan sorcerer that's going to look down and curse them. And you would think God would say, you know what? These people, they are always rebelling. They're always cursing me. Their hearts are always going astray. I'm going to just hand them over. Let Balaam curse him. But he doesn't. God defends his people even when they are faithless. And the New Testament says that God is faithful when we are faithless. And so Balaam is up on this mountain. He looks down to curse them, and he can only bless them. And he blesses them 3 times, because what God has blessed is blessed, and because what God has cursed is cursed. You can't curse what God has blessed. Can I tell you, friend, that you are blessed? You are a blessed seed of God today. The blessing of God is on you. And though the enemy rages, you can stand and behold the glory of God. He is your defender. He is your shield. And it reminded me of the song Waymaker that says, even when I don't see it, he's working. Even when I don't feel it, he's working. You know that song? He never stops working. And so even if you can't see God working on your behalf today, let me assure you that God is in the midst of your situation, and he's working on your behalf. This is also, I'm going to jump ahead here to Psalm 28 just for one moment. This was one of our chapters, and verse 8, it says, verse 7, the Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in him, and I am helped. Therefore, my heart celebrates, and I give thanks to him with my song. Give the Lord your song, because he is your shield. He is your strength. So the book of Numbers ends really focused on this next generation that's coming up. We see that they take another census. Remember, that's why we call this the book of Numbers, because they're numbering the people. We see them win many battles, and then they start to settle in the new land. And that concludes the book of Numbers. If we move on to Mark chapter 5 through 11, these are wonderful chapters, glorious chapters. Some of the things that stood out to me in Mark 5, in 5:34, he says, your faith has saved you. And in 5:36, he says, don't be afraid, only believe. It reminded me of the song, only believe, all things are possible, only believe. And I want to encourage you today, friend, only believe. Keep the faith. Keep believing in the promises of God. Keep believing in the Lord, your shield and your defense, because God is working and he is going to see you through. And I believe that miracles are on the way for you this week. So join us back here next week for Holy Holy. We'll start Deuteronomy and just see what all we can find as God continues to reveal himself in his word. Remember to email me, Jasmine@regenerationnashville.org. I want to hear from you. God bless you. See you next week.